Welcome to our episode of Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down. Sponsored by Bible Interact and hosted by Dr. George Sparks. Now let's explore the field of archaeology in today's episode.
Well, welcome to Biblical Archaeology from the Ground Down. Today, Dr. David Graves has a special presentation on how the ancient world struck coins. Actually, we might say the ancient minting technique, like we're talking about minting coins. In the ancient world, they didn't mint coins the same way we do today. So they used certain dies and they hand struck them, first the obverse side and then later the reverse side. Dr. Graves is going to explain this to us. Also, the locations, why certain locations, and also under whose authority. Not everybody could just go around striking coins, just like not everybody could go around minting money. That would be nice, wouldn't it, David? I'm not going to say it. In trouble. But anyway, hey, did they forge coins in the ancient world? I'm sure they did, But anyway, we know that they tampered with the weights for buying and selling. So we're going to find out more. Dr. David Graves, welcome to the program.
Going to be with you, George, as always. And yeah, we're going to talk about coins today and how they made them in antiquity. A little different than today. So I've actually visited the mint in Ottawa, Canada. I'm Canadian, so I was able to go through and see how they were doing it here in Canada, up in Ottawa. So it's a little different. So we're gonna dive into it a little bit and explore that some and just give everybody a bit of an idea. I'll start my PowerPoint up here and then we'll share a few coins and things with you.
Well, everybody likes to know about currency in the ancient world and how it came about. They didn't always use currency. They used sometimes just scrap metal like bits and pieces of broken jewelry or chunks of silver, chunks of gold. And then they put it on a scale and then weighed it to see exactly what it would be worth. It's worth 2 camels. That'd be hard to bargain back there. How much is your grapes worth? Grapes on one side of the scale and a coin on the other?
So today we're going to be talking about crafting ancient coins. We would call this striking the coins. That'll become apparent in a moment. So crafting ancient coins, the invention of coins. The first coins were called electrum, comes from the Greek word electron. And this is basically a blend of gold and silver before the process was perfected to separate the gold and the silver. They started to use this in the Lydian province, particularly in the city of Sardis. Now we know Sardis is mentioned in the book of Revelation. It's one of the 7 churches. But back in the 7th century BC, the king started to mint these coins called electrum. Here's one of them right here. And during the reign of King Croesus, 560 to 546 BC, the metallurgists of Sardis discovered the technique of separating the silver and the gold. And they began to refine the metals to purify it even purer than the previous electrum. They made it nice and bright. You'll see the different color, the electrum here on the right compared to the gold stater on the left that has the far left, the gold is bright yellow. And this is sort of a pale yellow. That's because it had impurities mixed in with it. Gold, silver, copper, tin, iron, but they were able to separate all of this and they were able to make pure silver and gold coins. So one gold stater was equal to 10 silver coins. They likely meant that Sardis was the first to produce gold and silver coins. And not that they invented coinage, but the gold industry made Sardis rich, and Croesus, his name became synonymous with wealth. Now, as we move forward into the Roman period, here are some of the Roman coins. You can see the different sizes going from the quadrans, semis, as, quintarius, denarius. The denarius is the one we often hear about in the Bible mentioned. They come in different kinds of metals. So coins are generally, the 3 kinds of coins we know of are the gold, silver, and bronze. in the Bible, we also have what's called the pruta, the widow's mite. So the three that we generally have in the New Testament time period is the Tyrian shekel, the denarius, and the pruta. Here they are right here. Tyrian shekel, which was high in silver, and that's why they used it. And one of the reasons why the earlier electrum was not so popular was because it was not that accurate in the amount of materials that it had in each one of them by weight. So they couldn't really tell how much gold and how much silver, and they started to cheat, and they had to take and weigh it in order to determine. But there was a lot of fraud, and of course the king made a lot of extra money because he said there was less gold in it than there actually was. The word for especially in archaeology for looking in a specialist in coins is called numismatics, and that comes from the word numisma, meaning the current coin, from the word numidzo, meaning to use customarily or to deem valid. It comes from an earlier Greek verb meaning nomos. That's the word for law or custom or usage. So in ancient Greek, numisma originally referred to anything sanctioned by custom or sanctioned by law. That's where it comes from. And we get it. It carries over. It goes to the Latin numismata, and then it goes into the French numismatique, from which we get our English word numismatic. So anybody that studies coins is numismaticist. It's important for the study of scripture and for the study of archaeology because it gives us an insight into the people who reigned and lived, gave us an insight into their customs, into their religious practices with the imperial cult, a lot of symbols or gods, things that were important to the king and to the emperor who was ruling. They usually showed up on the coins. So here we have, of course, Tiberius Caesar. He was the Caesar of the New Testament period. And here his wife Livia is seated on the back end. Sometimes it showed them deified. Sometimes it showed them doing just normal things, chariots, animals, all kinds of different things. Here we have the Tyrian shekel, which was the temple tax. We've already talked about this in previous podcasts. The half shekel and the full shekel. It was a half shekel for the temple tax, and so per person. So if you were a couple, then you had to give a full shekel. Now, the mending technique, how were these things made? Well, they were vital for trade, for taxes, for propaganda in the first century. That's how they got their message out, reflected the economic and political context of the New Testament. So we know a lot about what was going on in the New Testament from the coins. And the archaeological finds of coins enhances our understanding of scripture. As we said, here is Tiberius Caesar. Here's the bronze coin. I showed I think a silver one earlier. And of course, when Jesus said, takes a coin and says, give unto Caesar what's Caesar, well, that's the Caesar that he's talking about, Tiberius. Coins facilitated the commerce, the taxation, the cultural expression in gold, silver, and bronze, and sometimes copper alloys. The Roman denarius, the Jewish shekel, the lepton, that's the widow's mite, or the pruta, it's called in Hebrew. And Jesus uses it in his teachings in Mark chapter 12 particularly. So, and you remember that Jesus was betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. So they sourced their metals from the mines and recycled the objects, sometimes other objects that were made, jewelry and so forth. They speculate that after 70 AD, there was a rise, existence, the counting of gold coins. And so the speculation is that the gold coins have come from the objects that were taken in the temple, the gold objects that were there. And that's what we have, an increase in gold coins. And so alloying mixed metals from durable and valuable control. So they were able to control the metals. And first they would make plans that were basically blanks created by pouring the molten metal into these molds. I'll show an actual mold from the museum here in a moment. And then the blanks were shaped by hammering or cutting the blanks. And so you find things are not always on center. The ring around Livia here is not really on center. It's a bit off. That's because they hammered them. They made them one by one. They didn't have any manufacturing assembly line, as it were. So the dies were engraved, and they would put these on the stamp, and then they would hammer those onto the obverse and the reverse with the different designs. Artisans, they carved the rulers' portraits and symbols or inscriptions. The dies made from hardened bronze or iron for durability, and they reflected, as I said, the political religious messages. And then they would strike the flanks, as we see here in the image. These are drawings that were taken from the Aphrodisias Museum in Turkey when I was there in 2004. They had a nice display showing how these things were made. They strike it with a hammer and multiple strikes sometimes to ensure a clear impression on the coins. Hand striking caused, as I said, inconsistencies in the alignment or the depth. That's why you find some coins looking a little better than others. And it's because they're all hand done. And so the process limited the production compared to modern methods. You've got a manufacturing system that speeds the process up here in modern times. So here's one of the molds. You can see how it's open at the top right here, as you would put these two pieces together and bind them together, and then you would pour the liquid metal inside of it, and it would make the blanks. And then they would use this device with the die on the end of it to stamp each side. The obverse often depicted the ruler, Tiberius or Herod, and even if a regional ruler made a coin, he often would put the Roman emperor in Rome on it because he wanted it to be in good standing with the Roman emperor. The reverse side showed symbols of power, religion, or local identity, inscriptions in Greek, Latin, or Hebrew, sometimes Aramaic, such as year 2. We already looked at a year 2 coin called a revolt coin. And sometimes they carried theological weight, as in Matthew 22, verses 19 and 21. Here we have the revolt coins we've talked about found in the water channel. And this was the temple tax. And this ran from the temple area down to the pool of Siloam. So in 68 AD, it read Holy Jerusalem. And in 6970, the message changed to for the redemption of Zion. That was year 4. So as the political atmosphere changed, so did the message on the coins. But you see a cup there and a pomegranate on one and different symbols on the other. The mints were operated in major cities normally. So in Rome, Jerusalem, Antioch, we already mentioned Sardis in Lydia. And it was controlled by the Roman or local authorities. So they had control of how these things were minted. Sometimes we find coin hoards, like we would have a piggy bank. Sometimes they had an oil lamp bank, and they would collect their coins and put them in an oil lamp, similar to we would, collect pennies in a piggy bank. And sometimes we discover those archaeologically. The coin hoards reveal the mint location, the economic patterns. Strict regulations prevented counterfeiting. Anybody caught would be punished. So the coins confirm rulers and the dates in the New Testament narratives. They help us date. So that's why they're very, very valuable. And these hoards reveal the economic conditions of the time as well. The symbolism highlights the Jewish-Roman tensions. They provide tangible context for Jesus and Paul's teachings. So it shows the artistry, the technology, and the politics, and evidence of coins enriches our biblical interpretation and our connection to the first century world of scripture. So here we have a fire where you heat up the metal and you pour it into the plate, the mold, and then you hammer the blanks that you make with the mold, putting the face of the emperor on the surface of it. Remember, Jesus said, "Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's." So here we have what he's talking about. So that's my quick overview of coins and how they were struck, not really minted. Do you have a few samples?
Yeah, I was trying to, while you're talking, I was trying to put some things together here for the audience. We were talking briefly about how one of the most common potteries that we find, some of the most common pottery that we find at an excavation are oil lamps.
Yep.
Or maybe even dipper juglets, something small. Now I'll just use this as a resemblance to think of a dipper juglet. It's an inkwell, but a dipper juglet, something very small. And there are occasions that coins are found in lamps because people used lamps and stored stuff inside. They're so common. So now once you have your coins in a lamp, one could actually stash it and hide it. So it becomes you could say their bank.
Yeah.
There's lots of evidence of this. I've been to different museums and noticed collections where there would be throughout time periods where I said the Iron Age, let's say 1000 to around 586. I've seen dipper juglets. Now, they're not going to have coins that far back, but they'll have scrap metals. Well, that's not exactly true. When we get down to the Persian period in the 5th century, I see little bitty coins, little coins. So the coins are becoming in use in the population, but I don't think they're fully trusted. So they're still going, even if you're going to use a coin, they're going to have to weigh it. They're going to be placed on a scale.
Here's a little tiny one. A
There you
Roman
go.
coin. Picture of a woman on it. These are from the British Museum. These are reproductions. They're not real. I have a few real ones in my collection, but you were saying some really tiny ones.
Yeah.
Holding them in my hand, you get an idea of how small they can be.
Okay. Denarius.
This one's here's. I'm not sure.
It's where we get our word dime from. Look like a dime.
Yeah, yeah, but the size of, well, it's actually even smaller than, well, it's a little tinier than a dime even. And then you get them a little bigger. And here's some Greek coins. These ones here are this is the famous owl. You can see how they're not quite they're struck with a square. That's hard to show them. There it is, a little better. And then I got one here. Well, we got Alexander the Great on one, and another Greek silver coin. Then you have some of the gold coins. These are little tiny ones too, the gold ones. And then you can get them pretty large. So this is I'll get the head turned around right. The drachmas, sestercians. And like, I'm not a numismatic specialist at all. There's some really, oh, it's upside down again. Yeah, there we are. Somebody's sitting on a seat, probably Livia or one of the gods. So again, a whole lot of different images on them. Well, they do help us understand what's going on in the area and the region. So, and then you've got a few of them we showed earlier there too. So,
yeah. So you get denarius, but they could store it in like here. They could be stored in any type of antiquity, and then who knows? I mean, I've lost coins laying around. They might roll under furniture in between a crack, and then that's where they find them. You could say in excavations. This is an inkwell. And if we take the inkwell, maybe they, you can say, put coins in their inkwell and saved it and then forgot about it and misplaced it. Or now I'm going to find a picture for this, David, because I know that it happened. I seen it in the Israel Museum. They were excavating a Jewish house from the Roman period. I'll say Roman period, but the equivalent of what we would call in Israel, the Herodian period. And at the end, pretty much of the Herodian period, the temple was destroyed. So there's a whole communities of houses destroyed. Well, in this particular house, this individual was saving the small prutas, these little bronze coins right here. And there were like over 200 in a fairly large Herodian lamp. It's like this, but it's like 4 times the size. And it was full of these little bronze prutas. Now you can see here, just if I take this and turn it upside down, you can hear it hit the ground, coming out, hit my hand. You can find all kinds of prutas being stashed in a lamp. This could probably hold several hundred itself. So I'm going to find a picture for this because it's really cool.
yeah.
Now, I believe there's like 212 prutas in this lamp. And a friend of mine, I thought was cool. So I did this for a museum. A friend of mine had a large lamp in his collection, and I purchased it for a museum, and then I took it to David Endon, who is a well-known biblical coin expert. Matter of fact, I got his book right here. Let me see if I can get it out for everybody real quick. Ah, there you go. And what David did is we tried to copy the prutas that were in this large oil lamp, and so it went on display in a museum. Now, scholars suggest, not me, scholars suggest why so many prutas were in this lamp. It was actually hid behind a mud brick wall. So somebody intentionally stashed it 2,000 years ago.
It was the retirement savings plan.
Well, it's a savings plan. Well, it might even be your friend Rittenmeyer that came up with the suggestion, Dr. Lean Rittenmeyer, that they possibly were saving the 212 pruta, the equivalent of a half a shekel, because that was the temple tax for an adult male. So it was there, put away, so he would have it for the time of the temple tax. Well, something happened. Of course, we know about the first Jewish revolt. A lot of people didn't make it back to their home. As we know, in the excavations on the west side of Jerusalem, which we talked about the other day, one was called the Burnt House. It's actually referred to as the Burnt House. And the other one is called the Wall Museum. I believe it's spelled WOLH. And here's a whole community of homes from the wealthy side, and a number of artifacts were found. Now, this could be the case that it was destroyed during the end of, let's say, 70 AD, when the temple was destroyed.
Right.
Okay, with that in mind, David, a nice presentation. He just told me about it yesterday, and I said, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. I was trying to go over to a friend's house because he had one of those coin molds. Maybe I can find it and I'll bring it, and I'll take pictures of it so you can place it into the video. Now, what happened was they had a mold, and it had you could say sections of cut out, and there was a channel going to each area where the coin would be. So we call this like a sprue that would attach to the coin. So think of it, if you ever bought a model and you wanted to the model together, you take these pieces and you take it off. You could say it's almost like a branch of a tree, and you take it off there, and you might have to sand it down a little bit or trim it. Okay. Very same idea in how they made coins in the ancient world. They'd have a mold, they would shoot metal into it, and then when it hardens, they would take it loose, all right, and it would be attached to, we'll just call it the tree. And each one would branch off, and they'd have to cut each one loose. Or in the case of maybe the pruta, it would be made so, like cheaply, they could just like break it off. And you can see these are really crude, because you can find these little prutas and sometimes they're not all there. So they probably just twisted these off the tree mold and just let them fall onto a table. I've seen hoards of prutas in the thousands. Maybe you have seen them in Israel. So it's not uncommon to find, it is uncommon to find a hoard, but it's not uncommon to find a lot of prutas, because they were just made, they're minted in the thousands. And it took so many of them to make, you can say, a larger denomination, such as a denarius, a silver. So it'd take a lot of prutas to make up a silver coin. And then you go to the half shekel. Well, in this case, maybe it was the 212 prutas that make the half shekel. Well, enough said. I don't want to be too repetitive. Okay.
Well, it kind of ties everything together. We've been talking about coins a lot in different podcasts. I just thought it would be helpful for people to understand how these things were made, and give everybody a bit of an idea. And it's too bad we'll have to find that one in the museum vault of the mold. And if we do, we'll do another short podcast.
We don't have to. It's right in his book.
Oh, there you are. Okay. There's
Do you
your
believe that?
Oh, great. Well, you send me a blow up photograph of that and I'll put it in the podcasts for everybody to see. So,
How lucky
good.
can I get?
There you
I was
go.
telling David I was looking for, how long was I looking for that? Like an hour?
Oh, it must have been an hour on your phone. You had AI
Yeah.
looking for it and they didn't have any idea that it existed. And
They called me a liar. They said,
yeah,
you're an idiot. Well, I said,
there you
leave us
go.
alone, you fool. No
Great.
such thing. But there it is. Well, that's why you want to get a book like this, right?
And why you
Because
want
it shows all the rarities. David Hendon, Guide to Biblical Coins. It's
to take and chime into our podcast because we bring the receipts.
absolutely, it's right here. Ta-da. And man, I wish I could go. I know he's got a mold in here in too, but okay, folks. Anyway, it's a great book. You can get them online. If you want one signed, you can email Dr. David Hendon and get his book signed. Matter of fact, let me see. There's a picture of him right there on the back. So now you
Good.
know.
Good.
Oh, you believe that? After all this looking, it was in the book sitting on my desk.
Who needs the internet when you got books? That's great.
That's right. We go old school, right?
That's right. We're
there
old
we have
school here. Good, everybody. Well, have a great week, everybody, and we've got some guests lined up for you for the
Oh, yes.
future. So we'll have some good stuff for you. So keep chiming in. Our podcasts continue to grow, and I don't know what our numbers are up to. I haven't looked recently, but
276. We were down for about 3 days there, and but anyway, 3 days, whatever. But 276,000 subscribers. Everybody, do me a favor. Me and David a favor. Remember to like. That's that thumbs up. Rustle the thumb. Make sure you get it up like that. And then also subscribe. But when you subscribe, ring the bell so we can notify you each time we get a new speaker coming up. Also, we're going to start a Patreon. I hear that from some of the CEOs in Bible Interact. Me and David, we're the side hustle, the biblical archaeology from the ground down. We just came onto the scene about a year and a half ago and said, hey, let us do something about archaeology. And they gave us the shot. So here we are. Anyway, thanks a lot, folks.
We're just the plebs.
Well, yeah. But look, all these guest speakers we got coming up. I'm not going to name them because it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm excited. And stay tuned because that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll exercise some of our artifacts.
Some of the people that you meet, you got to be careful who you're digging with. All right, everybody. Have a good time out there. We'll see you again next episode. Remember, like, subscribe, ring that bell. Thank you very much.